Translation you have to John 7, and we will be reading a good bit, so you can just follow along with me. And it reads as follows. After this, Jesus went around in Galilee. He did not want to go about in Judea because the Jewish leaders were looking for a way to kill him. But when the Jewish festival of tabernacles was near, Jesus' brothers said to him, "Leave Galilee and go to Judea so that your disciples may see the works you do. No one who wants to become a public figure acts in secret. Since you're doing these things, show yourself to the world." For even his own brothers did not believe in him. Therefore, Jesus told them, "My time is not yet here. For you, any time will do. The world cannot hate you, but it hates me because I testify that its works are evil." Verse 8. "You go to the festival. I'm not going up to the festival because my time has not yet fully come." After he had said this, he stayed in Galilee. However, after his brothers had left for the festival, he went also, not publicly, but in secret. After the festival, the Jewish leaders were watching for Jesus and asking, "Where is he?" Among the crowd, there was widespread whispering about him. Some said, "He's a good man." Others replied, "No, he deceives the people." But no one would say anything publicly about him for fear of the leaders. Not until halfway through the festival did Jesus go up to the temple court and begin to teach. The Jews there were amazed and asked, "How did this man get so much learning without having been taught?" Jesus answered, "My teaching is not my own. It comes from the one who sent me. Anyone who chooses to do the will of God will find out whether my teaching comes from God or whether I speak on my own. Whoever speaks on their own does so to gain personal glory, but he who seeks the glory of the one who sent him is a man of truth. There is nothing false about him. Has not Moses given you the law? Yet not one of you keeps the law. Why are you trying to kill me?" "You are demon-possessed," the crowd answered. "Who's trying to kill you?" Jesus said to them, "I did one miracle, and you are all amazed. Yet, because Moses gave you circumcision, though it actually didn't come from Moses, but from the patriarchs, you circumcise a boy on the Sabbath. Now, if a boy can be circumcised on the Sabbath, so that the law of Moses may not be broken, why are you angry with me for healing a man's whole body on the Sabbath? Stop judging my mere appearances, but instead judge correctly." At that point, some of the people of Jerusalem began to ask, "Isn't that the man they are trying to kill? Here he is speaking publicly and they're not saying a word to him. Have the authorities really concluded that he is the Messiah? But we know where this man is from. When the Messiah comes, no one will know where he is from." Then Jesus, still teaching in the temple courts, cried out, "Yes, you know me, and you know where I'm from. I am not here on my own authority, but he who sent me is true. You do not know him, but I know him because I am from him, and he sent me." At this they tried to seize him, but no one laid a hand on him because his hour had not yet come. Still, many in the crowd believed in him, and they said, "When the Messiah comes, will he perform more signs than this man?" The Pharisees heard the crowd whispering such things about him. Then the chief priests and the Pharisees sent temple guards to test him. Verse 37. On the last day of the Great On the last and greatest day of the festival, Jesus stood and said in a loud voice, "Let anyone who is thirsty come to me and drink. Whoever believes in me, as the scripture has said, rivers of living water will flow from within them." By this he meant the Spirit, whom those who believe in him were later to receive. Up to that time, the Spirit had not been given, since Jesus had not yet been glorified. On hearing his words, some of the people said, "Surely this man is the prophet." Others said, "He is the Messiah." Still others asked, "How can the Messiah come from Galilee? Does not Scripture say the Messiah will come from David's descendants and from Bethlehem, the town where David lived?" Then the people were divided because of Jesus. Some wanted to seize him, but no one laid hand on him. I read most of this passage because I wanted us to get a good picture of what was happening at the time. And by then you could perceive that many have already heard about Jesus. By this time, his fame had already been spreading. He was known as the one who did miracles. He was known as the Messiah. He was known as the prophet, among other noteworthy things. But from the passage we just read, you can see that based on the group you interacted with, based on the group you were in close proximity with, Jesus might not have necessarily been known as the Messiah, the prophet, the miracle worker. He might have been known as a liar, a deceiver, a man making false claims, even a man possessed by demons. What I notice about the passage that we just read and other places in the New Testament is that those who believe that Jesus was a liar, a possessed man, a drunkard, a man who consorted with sinners and was thus of poor character, those who knew him as that were not necessarily people who knew Jesus personally. These were people who saw snippets of his life from a distance. They saw him with drunkards. They saw him with prostitutes. They saw him doing things on the Sabbath. They just saw him from a distance, but they did not necessarily know him personally. Or maybe they didn't even see him per se, but they heard about him from others who heard about him. And so for a lot of them, they didn't get to know Jesus on his own merits. They never took the time to get to not just know him, but to make a meaningful connection with Jesus. And I would hasten to say that this would have been their mistake. To think that they knew him or they had the authority to speak about who he was based on what they heard from others or based on what they saw from a distance, but they did not have any personal connection, any meaningful connection with Jesus for themselves. And I often feel that in the church, we often make the same mistake with each other. We frequently fail to make meaningful connections with each other on our own merit. Oftentimes, we have an assessment of each other based on what we've seen from a distance, from a few glances, or perhaps what we heard from someone else. And what is interesting is that in many cases, we don't take the time to make any sort of meaningful connection with our brothers and sisters that we see almost every Sunday. So today I just want to dive right in, and I want to talk to us about the way that we can move beyond that and make a meaningful connection. Now, I was supposed to have preached this word since last Sunday because it seemed to tie in well with the concept of communion. And we all know, those who are here, God did his own thing. But, after Tuesday night, I thought that perhaps the message needed to come after Brother Craig's word. Laying the foundation first that we all have this responsibility to be our brother's keeper. And some of us shared our thoughts and ideas in terms of why you think that we don't really step up to the plate in terms of fulfilling that responsibility to each other. And I think a big part of being able to be each other's keeper comes from making a connection that is beyond just superficial. You see, because if I'm not connected to you, it's hard to care about what's happening in your life. If I'm not interested in connecting with you, it's probably even hard to see each other. We're going to miss when things are happening. We're going to miss if somebody is struggling. We're going to miss if somebody needs support because we don't have that connection with each other. So I want to share with us this morning 10 ways to build meaningful connections. Number 1, get to know people for yourself. What I've come to realize is that people might be different things to different people. The experience that I have with this person may not be yours. So even if I would have had a negative experience, for example, with Brother Craig, and I tell you about my negative experience with Brother Craig, a lot of times what we do is we say, well, if Brother Craig had his negative experience, then I will also have this negative experience, and so I just want to avoid that altogether. And we don't often give each other the chance by being willing to make the connection, being willing to get to know people for our own selves. Perhaps Brother Craig's interaction with me comes from the fact that I respond to the way he responds to me. Maybe there was some kind of history behind that you don't have. And so your experience is going to be completely different. And I think a lot of times we have to be willing to get to know people for ourselves. It's not about hearsay. It's not about what you heard long before you came to the church. It's not about what you heard from the first group that you met when you came here. It's not about any of that because, frankly speaking, we have had situations where people come into the church and maybe you heard about the person before you got here. Or when you come into the church, the first group of people that greet you try to give you the lay of the land. And they tell you, sister so-and-so. No matter with that. I tell you, brother so-and-so, keep your distance. And so because we've gotten the lay of the land, we go through church life year after year, after year after year, and there is this lack of connection, and you are keeping your distance. The person doesn't really know why, but since you came, there's just this thing, and so because you keep your distance, they keep their distance, and it just reinforces the whole thing, and it's a big mess. But if you were to only have taken the time to get to know the person yourself. People, we have to get to know people for ourselves. Number 2, approach each individual with an open mind. Approach each individual with an open mind. Now, I know there's a saying that says we shouldn't judge a book by the cover. And yes, sometimes the cover does give you an indication of what's inside. But there are so many cases where sometimes the way that a person appears is so completely different than who they really are. I work with a group of counselors, and I remember years ago, especially when I had first started with, a couple of years, for me, it takes a while for me to build connections with people. And apparently, I have resting mean face. I just in my natural, I'm not a person who would naturally sit down and, I don't know, look, I don't know, are you supposed to smile? Is that supposed to be your resting face? I don't know, and I remember I was at a workshop sometime when one of the counselors took a picture of me and sent it to me. It's like, if I didn't get to know you, I would be afraid to approach you. And just seeing the picture of myself, I also would be afraid to approach me because I just look like one of those persons where I'm just not approachable. And I've had many people say to me, hey, before I got to know you, I thought you were this serious person, you don't know how to make joke and so forth and so on. And sometimes we have people around us, they just have resting mean face. They might look mean, but they're not. Some of the meanest faced people are some of the sweetest people. Thank you for that, amen. If you would only get to know them. So I want us to begin to have an open mind about people. Forget about preconceived notions. Forget about how they might look, how they might present. Forget about the fact that they might seem to keep to themselves. Maybe they keep to themselves because people keep away from them. But I want you to approach people with an open mind. There's often more to people than we think. And again, I think it's natural for us you have to have some kind of mental idea about people based on how they present themselves. It's normal, it's natural. But I want us to be prepared to lay those aside in our interactions with persons and come into that with an open mind. That's 2. Number 3, assume the best of people until proven otherwise. Assume the best of people until proven otherwise. What I've come to realize is that many of us miss new experiences, new interactions with people because of past experiences that we've had with others. Many people do it in romantic relationships. You've had issues with your past significant other, and it was a mess, and so you take that into every single relationship that you have, whether it's mistrust, whatever it is. And truthfully, we do that as well with our connection with each other. So you were at a church before, you met church people before, and you've had these negative experiences with others, and so all church people are the same. Over thousands and thousands of years, psychologists say that human beings have learned that negative experiences are more important for their survival than positive experiences. So if it is that you can imagine persons in the hunter-gatherer times when you used to hunt for your food, if you and your tribe went hunting and you ate that red flower, and then all those who ate the red flower died, that's more important to remember than all of the other beautiful flowers you ate. So in the tribe's mind, it's a matter of survival. Whenever you see red flowers, this particular red flower could be fine, but remember the time when we ate that red flower. And so we've evolved over years to be more impacted by negative experiences as a matter of survival. And we take that survivalist mentality in our social relationships as well, so that our past negative experiences is now a matter of our survival, our emotional survival. And I cannot go through that again with other people. And so I'm just going to close myself off, because if I don't open myself up, then I am not at risk to be hurt again. And while it might save you from hurt, it also robs you of the ability to receive joy. A lot of the joy that can come from connecting with people and building relationships. We miss that because we are so closed off. Because when you're closed off to pain, you're also closed off to joy. And so it is important for us to assume the best of people until somebody proves you otherwise. If somebody proves you otherwise, then you know for this particular person has proven themselves to be, whether it is untrustworthy or unkind or disloyal or whatever the case is. So for this particular person, I know I probably need to adjust the way I interact with them, but not for everybody. And what I've come to realize is that we often assume the worst of people's intentions. So for us, people usually have the worst of intentions, but we normally have the best of intentions. So when this person said so and so, they meant to hurt me. They meant to embarrass me. They meant to insult me. But when I said that thing, they should know I'm not that kind of person. They should know I didn't mean to hurt them or embarrass them or insult them. So we flip it and we think the worst of people's intention, but we always have the best of intentions. And we need to begin to flip that in our minds, so that if we often have the best of intentions and people at times misunderstand us, couldn't it be the same for other people? Couldn't other people possibly have had good intentions but made a blunder in terms of how they did what they did or said what they said? And so assume the best. Give the benefit of the doubt and then ask questions. So you're not going to just give the benefit of the doubt blindly, but you give the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to assume that when you said so and so, that you didn't mean it as an insult, but I felt insulted. What were you trying to communicate? What were you trying to say, really? So I have done two things with that. I have given you the benefit of the doubt, that you're not coming at me sideways or you're not trying to attack me. But then I'm also seeking clarification. And I think we miss that step. So we assume the worst of people. So from the moment somebody does something that looks shady or sounds shady, they move a certain way, we just lock them off. No questions asked. The door is shut. And there's so many relationships in church that are like that. At one point, people used to talk. Something happened, and we assume the worst of people's intentions. We never had no conversation, never asked no question. I've seen what I needed to see. I've heard what I needed to hear. That's it. And then you start to move at a distance. But I'm talking about ways of building meaningful connections in church. assume the best of others until proven otherwise. Number 4, practice clear, comprehensive, and kind communication. Practice clear, comprehensive, and kind communication. Do not expect that people will or should automatically know how you feel, what you think, or what you want. But she should know that I wouldn't want her to do that. But he should know that that's not right. You can't assume. People are not mind readers, and I think we often expect people unrealistically to be psychic. So you're not saying anything. You're not telling them what you really want. You're not telling them how you feel, but they should know. And you vex with them because they don't know. And you're not telling them either because they need to figure it out. And so this cycle of anger and this misconceptions and miscommunications, because we just can't go the step of saying, this is how I feel about so and so. I think, or this is what I want to happen. But you have to be clear in your communication. And not only do you need to be clear, but you need to be comprehensive. Comprehensive means that you're covering all the bases. If you think that there's a gap where people might misunderstand, fill in the gap. Because if there is a gap, and if you were telling me something and there's a small gap of misunderstanding, I'm not going to understand what you say to me. Sometimes when my husband and I are talking, he will say something and it seems like it's understood. I'm not on a different page, me in a different book. Altogether. And it's only when we talk and he says so and so, and I say, but I was like, I was even there with you. Like I'm at a completely different places. And the words that he says seems to be to him simply enough to understand. But sometimes you have to be comprehensive. You have to try to make sure you cover all of the bases. Yes. And if there's any possibility of misunderstanding, you have to try to preempt how people might possibly misunderstand and try to see if you can fill in those gaps. And you also need to be kind in your communication. And I think sometimes we use the excuse of being truthful to be unkind to people. There is a way that you can tell the truth, but you don't have to embarrass people. You don't have to make people feel small by it. It doesn't have to be hurtful. And I think sometimes we want it to hurt. If we were to be honest, we want people to feel a kind of way. But that doesn't help with building connections. That doesn't help with building relationships. And that is what you want in church. You want good relationships between us as brothers and sisters in Christ. So, in regards to being kind, I want to tell us to temper our communication based on the person we're talking to. And I have seen over the years where persons would say, so they can't make like a joke, my kind so thin skin. So you talk to people any old how, you say any old thing because this is you. And people should know that you don't mean anything by it and they should just toughen up. This is what I have learned over the years. I will take you as you come. So if it is that you are not a person who likes jokes, you don't. Left up to me, I like to tease people. I'm extremely sarcastic. And a lot of my sarcasm is with a straight face. So I have made some blunders with different persons where I am being my sarcastic self, straight-faced, and people misunderstand. So I have learned to adjust myself with different persons. So I know that I can make a little rough joke with you, but I know that I just have to have like a straight conversation. We're just talking normal. And that's fine. Because I think we make it a matter of resentment. So if this person can't make a rough joke, you know what, deal with them because them the too thin skin, them the too soft, them they take on everything. And we keep our distance. But it doesn't take anything from you to adjust. But if you know a person is sensitive, why not just adjust your conversation? You know you can tell a particular person they're fat like a butter. And you know other person, you can't just go around saying those things to any and everybody. Leave that to the person who you and them make a rough joke and you're fine. We have to learn to adjust based on who we're interacting with, because I think we just want everybody to fit into a bracket, but people are so varied. People are so unique. People are so different. Some people don't like too much questions. Some people don't like too much talking. Some people only you can't have no serious conversation with them. Pure joke. Chat tripping it straight, and you just have to take them how they come. But we miss so much because we do not learn to temper ourselves based on who we're interacting with. And a part of that is what helps us to build connections with different types of people. That is how we have a variety of relationships in our lives. So you might have one person that you're connected with that's crazy, and you have the sane person, then you have the quiet person, then you have the loud person, then you have the aggressive person. And temper yourself, adjust yourself based on each person, and that will help you to build connections. Because when you just want people to come at you based on how you are, but you don't want to adjust for anybody, it's not gonna work. So when you interact with persons, when you're communicating, be clear, be comprehensive, be kind, and part of the kindness is meeting people where they are. Number 5. There was a scripture that I wanted to share that I thought was interesting. Proverbs 12:18 in regards to kindness and how sometimes we just speak how we want to speak. Proverbs 12:18 says, "There is one who speaks like the piercing of a sword, but the tongue of the wise promotes health." I like how the New Living Translation puts it. It says, "Some people make cutting remarks, but the words of the wise bring healing." If the way that you talk and approach people is cutting or hurtful in any way, then it is wise to adjust that. Number 5. And this one is big, so I want you to pay attention. Be willing to have difficult or uncomfortable conversations. We're talking about building meaningful connections. Be willing to have difficult or uncomfortable conversations. Unless you are the same person, like every single person is the same person, you're going to have disagreements, you're going to have miscommunications, you're going to have some form of conflict. Expect it. And for some reason, I don't know why, but a lot of people in church are under the misconception that because we are brothers and sisters in Christ, we won't have any kind of disagreement. We won't have differences of opinions. We won't have misunderstandings. We shouldn't have misunderstandings. Everybody should always be on the same page, happy-go-lucky, no kind of issue whatsoever. That's not how it works. Human beings are so different that at some point in time, your thoughts are going to conflict with mine, your feelings are going to conflict with mine, what you want is going to conflict with what I want. Expect that to happen. Prepare for it. There's nothing wrong, but it doesn't mean that people are not saved. It doesn't mean that it's not a church. And so because of that, you have to be prepared to have uncomfortable and difficult conversations at some point in time. Unaddressed issues don't go away. Let me say this again. Not because something happened and you never talk about it, mean it went away. Not because you, brother so-and-so and brother so-and-so had an issue and y'all just decide y'all not talking about it, because man don't talk about things. Y'all just stiff up y'all chest and y'all move on, right? Not because y'all don't talk about it, mean the issue is gone. Not because sister so-and-so and sister so-and-so had an issue and y'all decide y'all don't feel like talking about it, mean it goes away. In many cases, it festers. It just stays there as an undercurrent and it just festers over time and it gets worse. It might not become explosive, but the distance between you gets wider and wider. And then a year passes, and then 2 years passes, and by then you're thinking, well, I mean, this happened so long ago, why talk about it? And so you just keep rolling along, and then 5 years, and then you're holding your side for years. No, I don't have no problem with anybody in the church. I don't have no issue. I don't vex with nobody and a whole nothing. But y'all still not talking. And when something festers, and just like in the natural, and something is happening under the surface and it festers and it stays and it becomes infected, it does not just affect the origin, source of the issue. It starts to spread to the surrounding tissue. And people can sense, because it's beginning to spread, an undercurrent of something happening. They know. They see, they don't know what the cause is, but they can see that something is going on. It affects the ability to have community, to have brotherhood and sisterhood, and to have that sense of family among the people of God. It is important to have difficult and uncomfortable conversations. When you do have those conversations, allow all sides to be heard. I will be the first to admit that there have been situations and circumstances where I'm not interested in what the other party has to say. Sometimes I will even vocalize, I'm not interested in what you have to say, but what you need to do is hear what I have to say now. I have done that. I have done it more subtly. So, me will make you talk, but me not hear nothing that you will say to me. And when you don't ramble on to things that me listen to, me will tell you what I have to say. And I move along. Proverbs 18 says this of persons who respond like that. Proverbs 18:2 says, "A fool takes no pleasure in understanding, but only in expressing his opinion." So what Proverbs is saying, when you are only interested in saying what you have to say and sharing your thoughts, and you're not interested in understand, you don't want to understand nothing. I don't want to understand what make you say I don't want to understand why you did it. Someone is saying you're behaving like a fool. And so in these moments when we have to have difficult conversations with our brothers and sisters in Christ, uncomfortable conversations, it is important that each person has the opportunity to share and be heard. We're talking about making real and meaningful connections, because if we go through the motion, even in the conversations, just like, okay, I'm just going to let you talk. I'm not interested in anything you have to say, or I'm not even going to let you talk. Yeah, you might have had the conversation, but nothing was ever resolved. It makes no difference. It does not reconcile. It does not restore. It doesn't make anything better. And we've had years of doing that. We're very good at doing that. That if we ever bring ourselves to the place of having conversation, it's not meaningful conversation. You cuss. You say why you think the other person was wrong. They say why you think it was wrong. And two I vex. And well, I don't talk. I mean, I have nothing else to say. And we need to break that. Because we are at a place now where God is saying that the church of God, his people, need to get to a place where they're actually connected with each other. That we're not just in the same place existing, but we're actually connected together as brothers and sisters in Christ. And while we're having those difficult conversations, we also need to be willing to forgive. Ephesians 4:31-32 says, "Get rid of all bitterness, rage, anger, harsh words, slander, as well as all these types of evil behavior." Any of those sound familiar? The bitterness, the rage, the anger, the harsh words, the slandering of each other, saying things about each other. Paul says, get rid of all of that. He said, instead, be kind to each other, tender-hearted, forgiving one another. How? Just as Christ forgave you and me. Think about that. I think that last line is what really hits. Because we might be saying, hey, I'm justified in being bitter. I'm justified in being angry. Those harsh words I said were justified, they were warranted, they were deserved. But Paul says, put them aside for being tender-hearted, for being merciful, for being kind, for forgiving each other, just as Christ did for you, because truthfully speaking, a lot of us don't, like any of us, if we were to drill down to the core, we don't deserve God's mercy, his tender-heartedness, his kindness. We don't deserve it. And even if we bring it down to the level of interacting with each other, there have been times when we have wronged other people. Maybe not intentional, but we want people to forgive us, don't we? We want people to give us a chance to show that this is not who we are. This was a moment in time, and we need to be willing to give people that as well. From my experience and observation, relationships often become stronger when they're able to maneuver through difficult situations. Sometimes it's after that tough conversation that you become closer, that you have a deeper sense of understanding of the other person. And just the fact that you were able to weather a storm in your relationship, it makes the bond that much deeper. But a lot of persons don't get to that, because from the moment you have some kind of difficult conversation, from the moment there's any kind of friction, from the moment there's any situation that had to be dealt with, that perhaps there were harsh words and things said, we don't ever get to the place where we're able to weather that. A lot of relationships don't make it past that in church. Because it's sad to say, but sometimes the people of God who have been the receptors of God's grace and forgiveness are some of the most unforgiving people on the planet. Number 6. Be prepared for feedback on how you present to others. Be prepared for feedback on how you present to others. In a lot of cases, our interactions with people reveal to us a lot about others. But we often miss that those interactions reveal a lot about ourselves as well. During the passage that we read, Jesus gave some verbal feedback to the people who had things to say about him, who interacted with him a certain way. And in verse 19, he says, "Has not Moses given you the law? Yet not one of you are keeping the law. Why are you then trying to kill me?" Verse 23, he says, "Now if a boy can be circumcised on the Sabbath so that the law of Moses may not be broken, why are you angry with me for healing a man's whole body?" He says, "Stop judging me by mere appearances and judge correctly." I think a lot of times we just want to move through life and interacting with people, and we just want to interact with people how we want to interact with them, and we want to be able to make judgments about them, but nobody should ever have any judgments about us. And sometimes you will need to have people say to you, "Okay, but I don't like the way you're speaking to me. I don't like what you said." Or perhaps you keep talking about me or my kids or whatever, and I don't appreciate that. I think sometimes it is the hardest thing. I know it is really hard to receive feedback that tells us that we are not perfect, because what? Am I not perfection? And to get any kind of feedback that tells us that there are things that we need to work on is sometimes really hard to accept, because it is normal and it is natural, it is instinctual for us to get into self-defense mode, to justify why we are the way we are, and why we do what we do, and why we say what we say, and why we... But sometimes we need to stop, and we need to be prepared to hear how we show up to other people, so that we can begin the adjustment in ourselves. I'm talking about building meaningful connection here. And in many cases, it might not be like how Jesus did it when he came out, right? And he said, "Listen, okay, y'all are being very judgy to me, and y'all not doing any better. And you are misrepresenting who I am and what I'm doing." Sometimes it might be like that, but sometimes it comes to us in what we call an epiphany. You know those moments when you are, just doing your interactions and you just realize, those moments when you realize certain things about yourself, things that you didn't really notice before, it just kind of hits you. And what a lot of us do is when we have those moments of epiphany, we just kind of like, we shrug it off and move on, because then even for our own selves, we don't really want to address that. It's difficult to face certain things about yourself. And I would have told y'all before, it took like embarrassment for me to realize that I had an issue in terms of how I managed my anger. That I was busy at a workplace, checking goods as a cashier at the grocery store, customer walking up, checking groceries, and started carrying on about the line, carrying on about the cost of the groceries, carrying on and giving me all sorts of attitudes, and I wasn't in for it, because this is not my place. I don't make the prices of the goods. So she make nice, me start make nice too. Because who you talking to? Not me. And it was only when the person who was bagging said, "But you know me have to behave, so." And again, I was young, but I was a Christian, and it's like, when something like just punch you in your gut. And when I heard a woman who was not a Christian say, me have to behave, so. And whenever we have these epiphanies about ourselves, we need to work on things. You are not perfect. And sometimes you will behave in ways that you shouldn't. Own it. So be prepared for feedback on how you present to others, and be prepared to do something about it. Number 7, share responsibility for the relationship. Share responsibility for the relationship. I don't know why we do this, but what we often operate like is like everybody else has the responsibility for making a connection with us. Everybody else has the responsibility for maintaining the relationship. So if you and I are friends, they're supposed to call you. They're supposed to always call you. But then what about you calling? Or if you are in a friendship where you figure that the person isn't calling, how about you call? Both persons have responsibility for maintaining the relationship. And I think sometimes it's kind of like, okay, hey, people weird, see? People supposed to call you, but you're not calling nobody. You're sick, and you vexed because you missing from church, and you sick, but you're not telling nobody you're sick. And you're vexed because people not checking in on you. Your birthday come and pass, and everybody else get birthday greetings, but you're not telling nobody your birthday. Because people supposed to just know. In order for relationships to be maintained, it's giving and taking. giving and taking. And you can't put the sole responsibility to maintain something on the other person. If a person call you in a long time, you call them and say, but hey, I didn't hear from you in a long time, so, just making sure everything is okay. And I feel like if we were to all take responsibility for connecting, then our mindset would be different. Part of taking responsibility for the relationship also means that you have to accept your part in conflicts and misunderstanding as well. We're talking about taking ownership of the relationship. So if it is that you are getting into some kind of disagreement, you can't have a disagreement with one person. One person doesn't argue with themselves. A disagreement takes two. And even if somebody did you something and you never said anything, that also is something that you need to take responsibility for. Chances are that if there's any kind of misunderstanding, if there's any kind of schism, any kind of conflict in church, that both parties have things that they could have done better. I think in many cases, the blame we often put on one person. But I need us, even in terms of whether if there's a conflict, I want you to sift out and try to figure out if there is somewhere in there that you could have done things differently. Galatians 6:5-18 says, each of us should carry his own load. Anyone who receives instruction in the word must share all good things with his instructor. Do not be deceived. God is not mocked. A man reaps what he sows. The one who sows to please his sinful nature, from the nature will reap destruction. The one who sows to please the Spirit, from the Spirit will reap eternal life. Let us not become weary in well-doing, for in the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. Therefore, as we have opportunity, let us do good to all people, especially those who belong to the family of believers. Paul said, carry your weight, carry your load. Again, this was talking about doing the work of Christ, but in a community of believers. And it's the same thing with relationship. Every single person has a responsibility to carry the weight, to carry the load. And a lot of times what you sow into relationship is what you reap. Number 8. Be to others what you want them to be for you. Be to others what you want them to be for you. You want people to be kind to you? Be kind to others. You want someone to listen to you, to be a listening ear? Be that for others. You want people to call you? Call somebody. You want people to visit you? Visit people. What you're asking people to do and be for you, be willing to do the very same thing. You want somebody to invite you to lunch? Invite somebody over for lunch. Listen, I think if we were to operate that way, relationships in church would be so different. If we were to say, hey, this is what I wish would happen in church relationships, and you just go all out to be that for other people. And if everybody had that mindset that what I want people to be for me, I'm going to be for other people, church, completely different. relationships in church, completely different. Talking about building meaningful connections. Number 9, be willing to initiate contact. And this is connected to the first, but be willing to initiate connection with others. And this is to start relationships, because I think sometimes when you come into church, sometimes it might be difficult to connect with other people. And so you might have to be the one who initiates the connection. And I know for a lot of people it doesn't come naturally. I know that because for me, it is not something that comes naturally. It might not seem so, but I'm an extremely introverted person. Conversations are difficult for me. But I have had to initiate things because I want to build connections. Left up to me, I'll be in my house 24/7, just doing nothing, just being happy all by myself. I was one of those persons during COVID who just had a grand old time, not having to go anywhere, not having to have too much interactions. I was in bliss, okay? That is my normal and natural state. It is outside of myself to initiate conversation, to talk to people. Half the times when I come over and say hi to you, I don't know what to say after that. And so if I say, hi, how are you, how are things going? And you say, okay, and you don't ask me nothing else, me don't know what else to do. Truthfully speaking, I don't know what else to do after that. But the point is, I'm willing to put myself out there. And I think for you, many of you, if you have been longing to build connection with people and you feel isolated, you feel like you're not seen, you feel like, you're coming to church, but people are not really connecting with you, you might have to be willing to make initiate contact. Start something and people will know that you're interested in connections, because sometimes people feel like you come to church, as soon as the church finishes you dash out. Maybe people might feel like you don't necessarily want to interact with others, so they give you your distance. But sometimes we have to be prepared to initiate. We're talking building connection. And in part of building connection, number 10, give relationships time and opportunity to develop. Give relationships time and opportunity to develop. I know I said, even if it's not your natural state to initiate connection, but I also want to say that all connections will not be effortless. There's some people who just automatically click, and there's some connections that you'll have to work at. It's not seamless, it's not effortless. And truthfully speaking, even in terms of the quote-unquote effortless connections, it takes effort to maintain those connections. So I want us to begin to reframe our mind. When it comes to building relationships with people, it shouldn't be without effort. And I think sometimes we're of the misconception that connecting with people, it should be effortless. It shouldn't take something, it shouldn't be hard, but that's not the case. Building connection takes effort. And that means that we should take the opportunities that are already provided. What do I mean by this? So you're at church, that's an opportunity. All right, church finishes to say hi. Even if you challenge yourself to say hi, hello, how are you to 2 or 3 people that you're not accustomed to doing so, like that's an opportunity, you're here. Potluck, opportunity. Camp, opportunity. Sometimes we're given opportunities to connect, and y'all don't show up. But y'all want to be closer, right? But you're not coming to socialize. We plan a morning walk. Y'all not coming. You switch it from morning to evening. Y'all still not coming. I mean, real talk. Sometimes you have opportunities to connect. And a lot of times it's not necessarily about the activity itself, you know. It's about the opportunity to connect with each other in a setting where you can actually talk. We can actually get to know persons from in a different atmosphere. And sometimes if you want to build connections with people in the church, you have to begin taking the opportunities that you already have. And sometimes you might have to make opportunities your own self. You connect with somebody, you find out that they might like to exercise, arrange to go some kind of, I don't know, walking or something. Like sometimes you have to go out of your way. Because building relationships take time and opportunity. And you have to learn to make the most of that. And you have to give it space, time. It's not going to be instant for a lot of persons. Sometimes it's over weeks and months, a call, a check-in, how you doing, didn't see you, so like just a random message over time. And that's something we have to be prepared to do. We have to be prepared to give relationships time to build. Make use of the opportunities that you have to build those connections. So that's number 10, but I wanted to give a bonus. A bonus tip on building connections. And maybe this one might be one of the most crucial ones. Make space for people to be human. Make space for people to be human. What does it mean to be human? Imperfect. Humans have moments of frustration. Humans have feelings. Sometimes they get sad, sometimes they're weak, sometimes they're frustrated, sometimes, humans are multidimensional. And if you're going to build connection with a human, you have to remember that they're human. There's so many different sides to people, and sometimes people will be having bad days. Sometimes people will be really stressed because of what is happening, and they might respond in a certain way to you. But nobody is perfect. So just to share a little bit about me. Just in case you didn't know, I am also human. I am of that variety. Which means that I am also a multidimensional person. When it comes to my relationship with God, I am incredibly serious. But at heart, I am a joker. I love making jokes. I love a good laugh. I love having fun. I like to chat foolishness. I love to dance. Although admittedly, I am not the most coordinated person out there, but I'm working on it. I love to dance. I love to make things with my hands. I'm a very creative person. Like just making things with my hands. I like doing things with my hands. I like to DIY. If I can make everything myself, if I had the time to make everything myself, I can make it. I love things to be natural. I'm not a person who believes in a lot of chemicals, and I like natural things. There are times when let's say I like good music. I like good music in general. As long as it has good lyrics, I'm good. Doesn't have to be gospel, right? Give me a good old school love song. Good old school love song. I love that. Like, and some conscious music. You know what I call conscious music, right? Yeah, I love me some good conscious music too. Me love too much trippiness in the lyrics. Just give me some good, I love a good beat as well too. I've trained myself over years not to move, to listen first and move after, right? Left up to me, I'd start shaking a leg before I know what is playing, but because people, you have to listen first. There are times when I get frustrated, I get angry. There are times when I'm sad, there are times when I'm overwhelmed. I don't like conflict. If I could avoid conflict at any cost, I would. I've trained myself to address it, but I don't like conflict. But I also don't like to be taken advantage of. So I feel like if I'm pushed, like if I'm back to a wall, I would be willing to fight somebody. And I feel like I would win. That's how I feel. I feel like if you push me into a corner, I would fight you, and I feel like I would win. The point is that I'm a multidimensional person. There's so many aspects to me that is just beyond being a pastor and a pastor's wife. I feel like I'm a phenomenal friend, but do not look for me to call you on a regular basis. But just know that if you need me, I'll be there. And I think that for the passage that we read, a lot of persons missed the opportunity of knowing the multidimensional nature of Jesus Christ because they didn't want to take the time to make a meaningful connection with him. So whereas his disciples got to know him as master, as rabbi, teacher, as friend, who they sat by the fire and ate fish and chat, and they got to know him as Messiah, and they got to know him as prophet, and they got to know so many different sides of Jesus because they made meaningful connections with him. Those who are on the outside looking in, calling him liar, deceiver, demon-possessed, and all kind of things, missed such richness in their lives. And I genuinely feel that a lot of times in the Church of God, because we don't take the time to make meaningful connections with each other, that we miss tapping into the multidimensional nature of all the humans who come into this building on a regular basis. That we miss having the richness that can come from building genuine, meaningful relationship with each other. And I really was ministered to by Brother Craig's message on Tuesday that we are supposed to be our brothers and sisters' keeper. But how can we do that if there is no connection? How can we do that if there's no relationship? And that is something that we really need to work on. I'm not going to even generalize it as brothers and sisters in Christ, as Christian. Here at Faith, that is something we need to work on. We need to work on building genuine connection with each other. And I'm really hoping that these tips that I would have given, that we take them and we begin to execute so that this would truly be a family. Not just superficial, but genuine. May God bless you.